Today is the 23rd of January, and we've got a few people so far, and got some newbies and some other people that are supposed to be online and aren't yet, and hopefully they will check eventually. Gary Whitus is joining us. He has his grandson with him today, so he may be with us only intermittently. And okay, I think what we want to do is get started. And at this point, we have 3 topics. And I think what we'll do is do the one with Stuart first. And Stuart's issue was neck fusion constraints on Jujitsu, martial arts practice, and learning. Okay, Stuart, first questions. How did the surgery go?
Well, I don't want to drag it out too long. The surgery itself went great. In much less pain than I was before. I think I'll have my full range of motion, but I contracted during the surgery a staphylococcus infection, which necessitated emergency surgery a week afterwards. And then I had to go in for a 3rd time because they're not entirely sure what was happening, but it may have been a bad response to the antibiotic. So it's been kind of an ordeal, but I'm doing better now.
Okay. Has the doctor, or have you had physical therapist who's given you any restrictions, or have you said the magic word yet?
Well, I have to carry around this IV pump for another few days. When I get rid of it, my restrictions will basically be I'm not supposed to lift more than 5 pounds for another 6 weeks. But eventually, I'll get there. I guess even to expand it to include other things like knee replacements. Professor Kirby, didn't you have a knee replacement?
I had a knee replacement in 2006. The only thing I cannot do is I have to be Swari Waza, doing techniques from a formal sitting position.
Yes.
Anything else? Everything else I can do, sweeps, putting all my weight on my left leg, no problem. I think part of the thing is sometimes physical therapists will give you, and I don't want to knock physical therapists because they do a good job. They may be more conservative in terms of what they say your limitations will be, or they won't.
Right.
Whereas a doctor will say, if you ask a doctor, I know when I went for physical therapy for the leg, they said, if you can bend it 90 degrees, we're happy. If you can kind of straighten it out, we're happy. And then I went to my surgeon and I said, what's the range of the joint? And he gave me the range, how far the joint would actually bend or straighten out. And I continued the physical therapy exercises till I got to that point. So if you do get it, and I have a right shoulder replacement coming up, it's been postponed twice now. Physical therapist said I'll be able to raise my arm only 90 degrees. Doctor said you should be able to do at least 130, 135.
All right.
So sometimes you have to.
Yeah. I tend to think the physical therapists aren't used to seeing people as active as we are.
Yeah. And I think that's the issue, is that if you are active and you've got, the other key thing is if you've got the muscle tone, your range of motion will be a lot greater anyway.
Right.
Which is why I tell people if they need a joint replacement, get it done sooner rather than later, because you're going to lose a lot of muscle tone. And that's what the orthopedist said for the knee replacement. He said, I could wait another 10, 15 years. He said, but the cost to you is that you will not regain the amount of use of the leg that you have right now. And I said, okay, when can we do surgery?
Yeah. Well, that's kind of what mine said as well.
Yeah. So anyway, my concern was, because I didn't want to offer any medical advice because I'm not qualified, and I don't think any of us are here, was kind of like what my surgeon for the shoulder replacement, he said, no jujitsu after this. And I said, I can work around it. So he's kind of like, but you have to realize what your limitations are, I think. But I don't know if anyone else has had experience, or, I mean, neck fusion is kind of unique in our circle. And I've seen some people with, where they've had fusions of their backbones, and it really restricts their ability to bend over, turn, all sorts of other things. It is, I think it's a really individual situation. Almost.
Well, mine seems to be, I mean, I can't test it right now, but I think I'll have pretty much the range of motion I had. So it kind of may be a moot point. But it's a concern of mine, obviously, is you don't have neck fusion surgery every day. And, doing what we do, we kind of use every muscle on our bodies, so. But I was just curious if anybody was, anecdotally was aware of anyone else who had neck fusion surgery and then resumed jujitsu. But it may be a small club.
Professor, this is TJ. We did have a couple of students in the academy here that had neck fusion surgery. And it was, part of it was what the students were willing to press themselves to do, to the point you were making. But the one thing that neither of them, and I'm sure it was unique to their surgery, that they never attempted again, was any kind of ukemiwaza practice. We didn't do any shimiwaza, no neck restraints with them. And so they modified the way they did their Goshin waza, and we knew to train with them a certain way, but they were able to continue with just those few modifications.
Okay. Good to know. No.
I had some, knee torn out in some karate tournament and or whatever. It took me 2 years to be able to walk down the stairs without extreme pain. And I would recognize people who were walking with the same limp that I did. We'd nod to each other. We didn't say anything. We just nodded. We know what's going on. But after 2 or 3 years, 100% recovery, 100%. So it can happen.
Yeah. All right. Well, that boosts my confidence a bit.
Yeah, I would be leery of anything like any techniques involving anything that involves your neck,
Right.
which is almost every technique. But if you really want to go push to shove, but in terms of headlocks or what we call kubinagi, where you grab the chin,
Right.
you need to exercise some really good judgment on your part. Because you only get one neck,
Yes.
for lack of a better phrase.
The doctor said it could take up to a year for it to fully fuse, for the bone to fully,
Yeah.
So it may be for a year I have to do just what you said.
Yeah, but one of the nice things I found with traditional jiu-jitsu is that you can work around almost any physical limitation. And if your technique base is sound enough, you can do this until you kick the bucket, for lack of a better phrase.
Right.
Sensei Kirby, we also had a guy that had a neck fusion in our class, and we had the same restrictions. He's training on a more limited basis now, but the same restrictions that TJ had mentioned was the same way that we took on his ability to continue to work with us and be a part of the mat. But then there's also another guy, Sam McSnitches, that Sensei Jack could probably tell a little bit more about. He's trained with us. He's 96 years old. He's trained. I don't know that he's had any neck issues as far as fusion is concerned, but he's had some neck issues where he had trained with us with no restrictions, just more neck brace all of the time. Sensei Jack may be able to elaborate.
Absolutely.
But 96, still training.
Good for him.
Wow.
Okay.
Excellent.
Okay. Let's move on here.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Oh, okay. And next item is knife across the throat defenses, commonality of initial response. And Darren, let's see, I need try to figure out how to share. I need to share the host with you. Share screen. I need to figure out how to do this.
I'm going to give it to you, Sensei. It's going to ask you in a second. It should.
Yeah, we want to get some pictures up and then some video. We're gonna get really techno here.
You want me to do the video first or the pictures first?
Let's do the pictures first,
Okay.
because that'll show the problem.
Okay.
Okay, and I'll just mention it here while the problem with knife across the throat is there are some techniques where if we get the pictures up, we can show it easier. I've seen some students some systems go straight into a drop throw for a knife across the throat from behind. I'm going to use let's try using Efren and his uke, and then we'll go to Darren for his version, his part of his video part, which you're going to have to do live. And Darren, what I'd like you to do, no, Efren, what I'd like you to do is, let's see if we can get you on the big screen here, is we want your attacker, who's a vicious attacker, I can tell, come up behind you, knife around your neck from behind. Okay, that's good. And I know in most situations we like to have people stand straight up, but if you could arc him back just a little bit to make him off balance, because that's more likely what's going to happen on the street. Because anybody who puts a knife at your throat and leaves you standing straight up is asking to get hurt. Anyway, so what happens a lot is I see, Efren, I want you to grab his forearm with both of your hands, and I want closer to his hands, closer to his knife hand, and I want you to pull his arm away from your body. Okay, that's what a lot of people will do. The problem is there's a really natural reaction at that point for the attacker to pull back. Okay, and because, and you're going to get cut. You're going to get more than cut. It's over for you. There's also a tendency to do this with two hands. The problem, I think, is doing it with two hands on top, right at the wrist, because you have no control over the person's arm or shoulder, and that's what's going to control what you can do. Okay, because you're just holding on to the end of a person. You're basically holding on to I guess we call it child joint, his wrist. And the attacker can do a lot with you just holding on to that. So you've got to get better control of his arm. Okay, so what we're going to have you do instead is a second better alternative is, okay, Ephraim, bring your hands down again. Get his knife to your throat. I want you to, no. Okay, I want you to bring one hand, bring your left hand at his wrist, and right hand goes to his elbow. Okay, now, but you're on the forearm still. And some people say you can use a nerve press at this point, and that's questionable. We'll leave that out since we're not that close. But now what you want to do, rather than pull it out and away, is pull it down against your chest. Okay. By pulling it down against your chest, you're in a more secure position. He can still try and pull up, okay, but it's a lot safer than pulling the arm away from you where you're not really in control of anything.
Right.
Except pure luck, okay? Now from here, you can try some techniques. You might want to go into a drop throw. You might want to go into a rear shoulder lock. You might want to slip under his arm and go into an elbow roll takedown. There are a lot of things you can do from here. But the key is you've got to bring his arm down against your chest and hold it there like your life depends upon it, because it does. Okay. Okay, then that's, then you're out of there. Okay, the third one, but this still has risk to it. So the third one we're going to have you try, okay, is one, his automatic reaction is if you try anything, he's going to cut, unless he really isn't there to cut your throat. So what I want you to do, and now one thing that's really important, this has to do anytime you're facing a person, you never want to have if an attack is underway, you do not want to have your hands down at your side. That's the worst place they can be, because your attacker can sense any movement you're making. Okay, so you want to start out, if it's a gun, you have your hands at about the height of the weapon. If it's a knife around your throat, you want your hands about the height of his forearm and the knife, okay? Because you want to have to move your arms as little as possible so that he can't see as quickly what you're doing, okay?
You are exactly right. I've been in these situations. You're exactly right. Exactly.
Yeah, you're not trying to be nice to this guy. Okay, so rather than having hands out there like Ephraim does, though, he's just showing them for height now. What I want you to do is simply bring your left hand up the middle of your chest, palm facing you. Okay, good. Now, your left hand, your other left hand, your right hand is going to go on the outside of his elbow. And you've got to do both of this together, okay? On the back of his elbow. Back of his elbow. There you are. Don't lift it up. Don't lift the uppy. Okay. We're trying to get the knife away from your throat. Okay. Where you're going to is you're going to hit that elbow to your left. You're going to slide your left hand up in between his forearm and your throat, and you're going to slightly shift to your right. In fact, you might even want to turn to your right. Turn your head to your right. Okay, now, okay, what you're doing here, you're getting the knife away from your throat. Almost identical to the second one we did. With your left hand, you now have to turn your hand so you can grab his wrist. Okay, are you looking at your, okay, no, grab his, okay, your hand was like this. you're gonna have to turn your hand the other way so you can get a good grip on his wrist. Because you gotta freeze the knife hand from moving. Okay, now from there, again, at this point I wouldn't go into a drop throw. That's not going to be, but you can do there you go. Shoulder lock for a takedown's a real easy one. Arm bar is a real easy one. Okay. And you've really got to go into something really fast to get that knife out of his hand. Okay. Osotogari, add a Sotogari to it. Okay. But the key here is, as Darryn will show you, and he'll have a completely different technique, is you want to get that knife as far away from your throat as possible. Okay. Bring your hand up and doing this fairly fast. In fact, you can have your hand. Yeah, you can switch. You can switch his hand as you're going into your shoulder lock or a takedown. Okay. You need to play with this a little bit and see what works best for you. But there is a possibility. Go back into the knife, into the situation where if you bring your left hand up in between his forearm and your, okay, there is a possibility that he's going to get lucky and pull back. Okay. And he's going to get lucky and pull back, and the knife is going to go across the back of your hand. Okay. Getting cut across the back of your hand is going to be messy, but you're still going to be able to control your hand, because all you basically cut back there are blood vessels. If you cut the inside of your hand, now you're doing some serious damage, and it may limit what you can do with your hand. So I'm not saying this technique is completely safe, but the reason the hand comes up this way is so that if the knife does come back, it's going to come across the back of your hand rather than across the middle of your hand. Okay, it's a lesser of two evils. Okay. I've been in one knife situation. I've never been cut. I don't ever hope to get cut. But if you have a knife situation, you always assume you're going to get cut. You have to make that assumption. Your students need to understand that as well. Hal Brocious used to have us train with, well, he'd do body concealment where you'd hide weapons. He'd have razor blades hidden on his body, inside his body, some body cavities. He used to have it, how do you defend a person against a person with a razor blade, which is a different scenario than a knife, because you're not going to see the razor blade for the most part. And he just had some really weird attacks, but it really opens your mind to, if you've never trained with it, you can just take a little piece of wood, 1 inch square, and put it between your fingers and have your students train with that. And that's just that opens up a whole new box of, not necessarily new techniques, but awareness. And that's what you're after. Okay, Darryn, they're yours. Enough of La Boca. Do we have audio here?
No, only you.
Oh,
I have audio. Audio is good.
okay. Some people aren't moving at all, and I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Efren. Okay, Darryn.
If you're not moving, you're not doing nothing.
Sensei Kirby, you narrating through this, or do you want me to talk through it?
You can talk through it, but you don't need to give as much detail. That everyone here can kind of see what's going on. So we're just going to have you start and go into that wrist trap, and then inadvertently your attacker gets cut.
Okay. All right, so we'll do the same scenario. Rear mugging attack with the blade up against the throat here. And escape would be to trap this, and I'm gonna try to do it by not compromising obviously my neck or even my hand. The way that I would do it would be to in one simultaneous movement. Here, I'm trapping the wrist here, and if you
Okay,
snap
stop,
short,
stop there. Okay, stop right there and turn a little more towards the camera. Okay, what Darryn is doing is trapping the attacker's wrist. And you'll notice it also takes the knife away from his throat. Okay? And that's the critical part right there. Because again, Darryn's number one move is to protect his neck. Okay, move onward.
Okay, so instead of reaching up for the blade, I'm gonna keep it trapped here, and I'm just gonna take one pivot to hug. You can see the blade.
If you notice where the blade is going, the attacker ends up stabbing himself. Okay. Now, there are, some people may have a hesitancy to do this. For the most part, this isn't going to be a critical injury to the attacker, but he will probably think it is because he's been stabbed in the chest. The penetration isn't going to be that deep, but it's enough to create some concern. There are some techniques in Budoshin, even like for a basic hand throw, and some other techniques where the attacker does end up cutting himself in the process of having the throw done. And of course, on the street, that's not your intention, but you can't always control where your attacker's body is going to go. But it's something you need to be aware of, and there are techniques, even this, like I said, a simple hand throw, depending on where the attacker is, he may end up getting a serious injury from his own knife.
Absolutely.
Which is also really, really critical. I think I mentioned it last time, if you ever pick up a knife, do not grab it by the handle. Grab it at the top of the blade from on top, ideally with just 2 fingers, and put it someplace secure. Do not throw it away because one of his friends might pick it up and come at you. But the students need to be aware that if they're doing defenses against a knife attack, it's possible that the attacker may end up stabbing him or cutting himself in the process of you doing a technique. And I can't think of any others, but the commonality with Darryn and my approach is that you have to get the knife blade away from your throat and trapped.
Absolutely.
If you can't trap the blade, you can't trap his wrist actually, which is why when Ephraim had his hand under the arm and then turned around and grabbed the wrist, is you have to grab the wrist to keep him from bending his hand and moving the knife around, okay, from the really vicious attacker that's next to him.
So what we learned, Remy Versas, tough guy, you peel your hands up, you peel your hands inside, because then their arms are outside. You peel it up, and that's how you protect your throat. And then you return to sender. You return it to the sender.
Yeah, but like I said, what you have to train, one of the things you have to train your students to do, irrelevant of the weapon, is to have their hands at a height that it'll minimize all this movement. Okay.
Absolutely.
And that's like I said, if they're coming in for the attacker wants to hit you, you say, because also this looks like in a street situation, this looks like I don't want to fight. You need to create the image that you don't want to do this. Okay, if person is going to attack you and you're standing there like this, okay, it makes you look like the aggressor. Okay, If you have your hands down at the side, I don't know where you are, but if this is, you know, this is how I train my students. You know, if you have someone who's being aggressive, you know, you get both hands up and say, I don't want to, you know, I apologize, I'm sorry, and you back away. It's also important that they back away, because that way it makes the other person look more like the aggressor. And that's the illusion, you know, for lack of a better phrase, that's the illusion you need to create. Because if you get into a court of law and you're saying, I stood my ground, you know, it's my right to stand my ground, that may fly in some states. In other states, it isn't going to fly.
This was perfect. I've been in that situation.
Yeah, I mean, I have too. You put your hands up, you back away, and you try to reduce the level of the situation as much as you can. And whatever you say in a loud, clear voice so that other people can understand you. Another thing I learned from law enforcement and dealing with people, you can speak in a loud voice and still be calm. And you have to sound calm. I don't know whether you call it verbal judo or verbal jujitsu, but a lot of how you sound is going to, you know, it's sad that you have to worry about everything else that's going around you when your prime concern is protecting yourself. But you have to, sadly. Anyway, anything else on this issue with getting the knife away from your body and trapping it away from your body? Okay. Last time,
So just the last thing is the snaking arms. You snake it out from behind. You don't pull it out. You snake it out.
yeah, as I said, even with the one I showed, you can't. If you try and pull anything out, this is a very weak position as far as you're concerned. Okay. This requires it's an awkward position. Okay. This, you can get your whole body behind it, as Gary said. If you can come up behind and push, you've got your whole body and all muscle strength behind you, and it's a very natural movement. This, I mean, you're trying to lift weights, okay? But when you're lifting weights, the stress is in going up, not in going back down. So, Jack, we don't have any audio on you, just to mention it.
Oh, okay.
Okay, now your audio's back on.
Sensei, I wanted to say, you said something about Harold Rush's, and if anybody out there hasn't had a chance to meet Harold or train with Harold, I'd recommend.
Yeah, he is.
He's a tremendous, tremendous master. He really is.
Yeah.
I've been his friend for a long time, and he's just tremendous.
Right. He's totally off the wall.
Yep.
As I've told people, compared to traditional jiu-jitsu, you look at his stuff and you say, how does this work? But when you do it, it does.
He's the man.
It's not artsy. There's, you know, it's you know, and I learned a lot from it. Now, he also has a good sense of humor. For those of you who are old enough to remember Buddy Hackett, he would be a great Buddy Hackett double.
Yes, he would.
Yeah, I knew Buddy Hackett. He was fat. He was very fat, but he was funny. Buddy Hackett was great.
Yeah, but Hal is a trip. Anyway.
He's an amazing man.
Pardon?
I said he's an amazing man, Harold.
Yes, yes. He filled in a number of spaces that Seki had. I started with Seki, but I said there's some things missing here, and Hal filled them in for me, and which brings up another issue. If you're because you may have this problem with your students. Both Seki and Hal knew that I was studying still with the other sensei. And I told both of them up front, this is what's happening. And if you have students that are studying in other places, you know, it can happen, it does happen. And Seki had a very, very strict rule, and Hal kind of like went along the same way, and that is, whatever you've learned someplace else stops at the door of my dojo. You know, I can't prevent you from learning other stuff. That's a battle you can't win as a sensei. But you can say, it stops at the door because it's going to mess with my students' minds. Now, if the student is proficient enough and he's one of your black belts and you're on good relations, and he says, Sensei, can I teach another technique to the students? It's up to you to say yes or no. But anyway, so that's, you know, it's just something to be aware of, because students do, we'd love to think they're going to stick with us until we die and not go anyplace else. But there's a real world out there, and you have to be able to.
That is a really hard problem, you know, all sorts of styles.
Yeah,
it's a hard problem.
Yeah, and you have to recognize it and be able to work with it. Otherwise, you're going to lose a lot of students unnecessarily. Because it comes down to a matter of respecting the students, and the other side of the coin is they should be respecting you too. But you have to respect the students, because they're the customer and they can go wherever they want. Anyway, last item we had is from Gary, having to do with training different levels and ages of students, young students. Brought up the issue of training women versus training men, the fear of body contact. So I don't know where we want to start. How many of you teach kids?
For me, I'm here, you know, I teach kids, I teach adults, and I'm saying, how do I teach all these people? They learn differently. It's crazy. How do I teach? It tears my hair out.
Okay, who now, kids I'm referring to under 10.
Yeah, pretty much, you know, 10, 12, you know, they're young, they're crazy, they don't know what they're doing.
Well, that's junior high kids. Those kids are fun.
They're fun. But then we get high school kids who want to beat somebody up. Now that's stupid. Don't be stupid. You don't want to beat people up. You want to train.
Yeah. It's an attitude that I think the instructor has a lot of responsibility in forming. That's why I tell my students at the outset, Jiu-Jitsu is a defensive art. Now, the reality is you can attack someone with Jiu-Jitsu, okay? And we all recognize that. But the philosophy is that it's a defensive art. And so it is hard to attack someone with a Jiu-Jitsu technique if they're not doing something to you. Unless you're going to haul in and hit them or kick them or something like to get them started. And yes, you could talk a person, you could get a person so aggravated that they attack you, and then you justify your, that justifies your defensive response. Unfortunately, in a court of law, there's a thing called verbal aggression. And your verbal aggression may make your argument of being able to say, well, we were just talking to each other and he attacked me. And once they find out what you said, you may not be able to use that defensive argument.
So here's where I'm going, is how do we make this play? I want to make it play. Wait,
How do you make it what?
play. All right, students, we're going to interact. We're going to play. It's all play. You're not trying to hurt anybody. You're not trying to win. We're playing about how to understand how bodies work with people. It's play.
It can be played to an extent. I know I spent several years teaching this to junior high kids. And junior high kids, A, they think they're invincible. And B, if they trust you, they'll try anything. And you know, and the key is to get them to trust you. The other side of the coin is that we would usually have, because I was dealing with, just a second, I've got to let the dog out. I'm sorry, if you're dealing with 140, 160 kids a day, 5 days a week, teaching them jiu-jitsu, you do inevitably get an occasional injury. And I would usually have a paramedic at least once or twice a semester. Because that was just the protocol the school used. And once the kids see someone who is injured, it really changes their perspective. And it really makes them, I don't want to say, kids are, they can recognize reality. And that really changes the tone of a program, because then they realize, yeah, a person can get hurt with this stuff. And that carries on, I know, from semester to semester, where, you know, where they realize, yeah, there is a chance I could get hurt here if I do something stupid or act carelessly. Seki, his minimum age for students was age 10. Because he figured, and I use the same criteria. At age 10, they have, for the most part, there are two reasons. He had two reasons. One, their large muscle development they're basically okay at age 10. They're somewhat coordinated. The other part is that at age 10, psychologically, they understand that they can actually hurt another person. And that's critical. Because younger kids, as Gary said, younger kids don't have that, you know, they're still in fantasy mode. There's nothing wrong with that. They don't realize they can actually hurt another person. And so the activities for younger kids have to be more around techniques that don't have a risk of injuring another person. Plus, kids are incredibly more flexible than adults are. High school.
I am so ashamed. I wish I was as incredibly flexible as I was when I was a kid. Now I am so ashamed.
Yeah, high school kids tend to be a little more aggressive, or sometimes I haven't noticed that distinction. I mean, I even taught this at the junior college level. I do know that you have far more males and females taking classes. I think that's a norm in any martial art.
Mm-hmm.
So that is really very important. I've run into this many times, that women are you know, men, males, are more aggressive and want to win, and women are have a different perspective. I don't understand it, but it's different, you know. I mean, so like some women, you know, we're supposed to train this technique. You step in and you punch. You say, no, 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 not like that. You don't step back. You step in to punch, and yeah. So men and women are different.
Yes. I think that the difference is men tend to rely more on muscle, women tend to rely more on technique. And again, I'm fairly straight up with students at the outset, and I will tell them, you know, that if the women in my class are serious, they tend to progress. Initially, they will progress faster than the men or boys will, until the males figure out it's technique, not muscle. And then it kind of evens out. I've also seen, I mean, the school I was at, if we didn't have one good fight a week, there's something wrong. I had never seen a guy win a fight against a girl. Because guys have rules for fights. Women don't. And that's a how do you say? It's hard to teach men to say, well, scratching is okay, or pulling hair is okay, or doing all this other stuff that.
This woman, she was so great. She was the most physically active person I could ever imagine, but she didn't know. I would step in, and you didn't have her know. She was doing long kicks. You just step in, I'm behind her, and then she, you know.
Yeah, if the female tends to be assertive, they tend to be a lot better than us. I had one girl, she eventually became black belt. When we used to have tournaments, the guys, tricky as they started to mature, they'd get chest hair, they would shave it off before going into competition, because she had no qualms about grabbing chest hair as part of a technique. And that's smart. I mean, you know, but she had the concept, you know, that whatever is available, you grab. And I mean, there is a difference. If once a woman, and I hope I'm not being sexist here, once a woman has the confidence that the stuff works, they tend to be more aggressive with it because they've got the technique down. And I know in the junior high, there were some guys that wouldn't work out with the girls because the girls were simply, quote unquote, too mean. And they really weren't. They just were doing their thing. I think the problem that Gary had also mentioned, that males tend to be more aggressive, particularly under 25, which is why a lot of them go to MMA and stuff like that today. I know when I taught at the college, I'd have at least one or two kids every semester, males, that would say, I'd like to, can I work out with you? I want to, you know, see how Jujitsu compares to MMA or whatever. And I said, fine. Here's the condition. I'm going to put you in a wrist press submission to the ground. If you can get out of it, I'll go down to the ground with you. And I never had to go down to the ground with them because they could never get out of the wrist press. I mean, you know, you vary the pain level to keep them from moving in certain directions. I said, that's the difference. With some of them, I know I probably lost on the ground without getting really dirty. but that's a difference, and I don't know how many of you teach that aspect in your martial art. There is no such thing as an illegal or dirty technique in jujitsu,
Absolutely.
and that's a hard thing to get people to understand or accept, because they've been taught you don't do certain things. And the other side of the coin is it's your life. And if you have to do something dirty that's not socially acceptable to save your life, I mean, it's your life. Okay, it's what else did Gary have here? Some kids, some students, I think the ability to train students, you do have to change how you teach based on the age of the student. Seki put all students ages 10 through adults together in the same classes. He said, it builds family.
It's a crazy thing. Kids learn so fast. They learn so fast. And then middle-aged kids, then they want to fight. And then old folks like me, that was slow. So somehow we got to pull this all together.
Yeah, it's you can teach. Seki taught the same techniques to kids everyone regardless of age. His attitude was, if you're old enough to be in this class, you're old enough to learn the art. And if you realize that you can hurt someone, then you have the responsibility to use good judgment. And it worked for him. But then that was back in the 60s and 70s where.
So I think the thing is, don't hurt anybody. Don't hurt them. Teach them, but don't hurt them. You know, teach, but don't hurt.
Well, I think I understand what you're saying. Hurt is relative because students have to learn how to use techniques correctly. And that's where, again, it's a judgmental thing where your uke needs to know when to tap out. And you need to learn how to apply locks or finishing holds slowly to establish, so that you can establish control over what you're doing. And then also when you become the uke, you realize that when you're doing a technique, you have a pretty good idea of how much pain you are causing this other person, because you've had the same techniques applied to you and you felt the pain or discomfort. And that's a learning process.
Thank you.
As well.
Exactly.
And
thank you.
I've had some students that are oblivious to pain. I've had some students, I've had couple of them went up into the black belt range. They were basically double jointed and they were extremely frustrating to work with. I had one kid who was double jointed and I could set an arm bar on him, perfectly set. And he was strong enough, he could literally lift me off the ground and over, because I didn't want to dislocate his elbow. And unfortunately, he passed away in his early 20s. But if from something else, what's important is if you have students who are very loosely jointed, you have to tell them, go along with the flow.
Oh yes.
Because if you allow this excessive extension of your joints while you're young, as you get older, you're going to start having.
Okay, just a second. So, the monster grandchild has come back. monster grandchild is back, so I have to sign off. This was a great conversation. How do we actually work with students? This was really great.
Yeah, there is no simple way.
Uh, I love Jujitsu. I love it, but now I've got a 3-year-old. Okay, bye-bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye. Okay, okay, anybody else?
Oh, wait, hang on. Here is this guy. Now, this is the guy.
This is a commander in
Can
chief.
you wave? Yes, you're the good guy. Sir. All right. Hey, this is great stuff. Why can't we do it more? But it's so hard.
Okay.
But my little guy here. Okay, I gotta go.
Okay. Does anyone else have any input on working with kids? Or
Yes, here's me right over here.
does anybody else have any input on working with kids versus adults or
Yeah,
Sensei,
versus men?
Sensei,
Kabloomy.
I always taught little bitty kids judo, and then I worked them into jujitsu when they got to a better age that they could do techniques without hurting each other.
Okay. And some dojo do that. Some dojo.
Sensei, there's something else. You were talking about the flexibility of youth. We have a black belt we worked with who in his late teens and early 20s, he had no problem dropping down and doing sideways splits. He was unbelievably flexible. I was doing a hand throw on him one day, and I made the assumption that because he could do splits, his upper body was as flexible. His wrist, the most stiff wrist I've ever used in hand throw. I almost broke his wrist. Point being that sometimes people have great flexibility in one part of their body, in his case, all the lower body, but not in the upper body.
Yeah.
That did never change. He's in his mid-30s now. I work with him from time to time, and that's just the way God designed him. So, it's pretty surprising.
Yeah, that's why one thing you might want to do is I have a couple students that I have as my preferred uke, okay? But I will always in class pick out random students and use them as my uke for two reasons. Number one, they get to learn how the technique feels correctly, okay? Secondly, it reduces their fear of me, particularly kids. Oh yeah, adults too, okay? And so, plus the other factor is you want to, and I'll do this at the end of class, I'll have a rotating line down the mat where they'll do a couple, 3 techniques with, we'll have like 10 people up and, you know, half are uke, half are tori, and after 2 or 3 techniques, they'll switch. You know, they'll get a different partner, and it allows them to, number one, they get to know more people, because most of the time students will work out either with a friend or someone that's their own belt rank or someone that's their size, you know, all these other things that make it easier to learn. But you also want to give them a challenge of, you know, what does a 12-year-old do against a full-grown adult? And they, you know, as they get better technique-wise, they tend to get more effective techniques. But they need variety. Every student does. I mean, even us as teachers need variety in teaching, because in the classroom, I would change how I taught in public school. I'd change probably every 3 or 4 years how I taught my classes, because I simply got bored. I don't like to do things at work. With jujitsu, that's kind of more difficult because you have this is what you have to teach, etc. But I would change how I'd run the classes every 3-4 years, or how I'd sequence the techniques. You do these because you yourself need to have a different approach, just to refresh things for you. So it's something worth considering. Anyway, any other comments with kids or women as students? I will agree with Gary. I know if I teach pure, what are called self-defense classes, and I prefer to call them counter-assault training, because self-defense to me it's a negative term. Where you've lost already. You're having to defend yourself. I would have mostly women in those classes, and they do tend to be, and we're talking adults, they tend to be very reticent about doing a lot of very effective techniques. They don't like the poke 'em in the eyes technique because there's a certain empathy. I don't want to blind this guy. All he's trying to do is whatever he's trying to do to me. So I use, I simply say, well, scratch across his eyes, which is they'll do. Sometimes you just have to change your techniques to meet their mental limitations or emotional limitations. Scratching across the eyes is just as effective. You scratch the cornea, this person is no, it's not going to blind them, but they're going to be out of visual operation for a few hours at least. Some don't like kneeing the groin. That's not nice to do. So I said, did you ever play soccer? And they say, yes. I said, well, don't knee the groin, just use a soccer kick. And for some reason, that's acceptable to them. Sometimes it's not what you do, but how you package it that makes things more or less acceptable to a sexual group or age group or things of that sort. And those are things you have to consider. They'd say, well, what do I do if I'm confronted by someone, or they grab me? And I said, well, if you're a place where, I don't want to upset my attacker. And my response is, why are you worried about your attacker? I said, men do not like, most men do not like overly aggressive women. So you become as verbally aggressive as you can, using as much language as your mother told you never to use in public or private. And you will attract a crowd, because everybody wants to see a really upset woman. Now, and that's a very sexist thing to say, but it works. And what you have to do is put aside the social norms, the social mores, and say, your prime concern is protecting yourself from injury. And you do whatever you can. Yes, people may be upset with you afterwards. Tough luck. You're okay. And it's, you really have, particularly if you're dealing with people that are very reticent, you have to be extremely upfront about this for their own well-being. And in all fairness, I've taught these courses. Usually after the first week, I lose half my students. Probably because they don't like my attitude. But, the ones that stick around do very well. And it's just something you have to be aware of. I mean, your interest is their interest. Anyway, any other comments or thoughts? Have any unique approaches when teaching self-defense, or other than jiu-jitsu classes? Or? Okay. Next session is going to be on February 6th. I think that's a Saturday. If you have any topics you'd like to have brought up, let me know. And we'll deal with them. And I want to thank all of you for participating today. I have to get going anyway because it's my daughter's 35th birthday and we have some surprises for her, even with COVID. So she's having she doesn't know it yet, but she's having a drive-by birthday celebration.
It's cool.
I don't know if that's a California thing or what, but we're weird in California. So, anyway.
Stuart, I just wanted to share something with Stuart, the way we started out today. Sometimes I get with my friends from other dojos, and we call it old man do, and we claim to have gray belts. Anyways, one of the guys that I used to be a guest sensei in our dojo is a guy named Walter Oka. At 57, he was heavy set. His nickname was Bowling Ball. He wanted to study Aikido. He ran to lose the weight. I worked with him when he was 80, 81, 82 years old. And he had a double knee replacement. And I did a hand throw on him. And he did a flip side fall to come out of it. So, Stuart, keep the faith.
Yeah, well, that's
at age 80 plus, he was still doing flip side falls and doing them well.
That's great. That's what I want to hear. I'll have to be judicious in how I, reintroduce myself to things I used to do, but I think it'll be okay. And talking about it with you all was really helps my
exercise the parts of your body you're able to exercise, increase the blood flow throughout your system. So when I get an upper body injury, I'm exercising my lower body. I get a lower body injury, I'm exercising my upper body. So that you keep that going. Yeah.
The exercising is important. Keep that up. You find what your limitations are and not look at them as something that limits other things you can do. Many times you may find ways to work around the limitation, safely work around the limitation.
Right.
And it's an individual process. I mean, like I said, I can't do Sawari Waza. I can sort of do it somewhat. And so I sort of do it somewhat.
Yeah.
But it's nowhere near, I just can't go into a full kneeling position. But you do what you can, and if you have a good jujitsu base, you'll be okay. There are certain falls I don't take right now at 76. No more front dives. Haven't done those for decades. But there are techniques. And there are techniques that won't allow it to be done on me as well. But you'll be okay. You just have to, how do you say, you find the things you can do.
There you go.
Just get better at those.
Get better at those.
Sensei, please tell Kim we all say happy birthday. You guys enjoy.
I will. Later on today.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate it.
Okay, have a great weekend.
Good to see everybody.
Say, Professor Kirby, could you keep the meeting going? If Daryl, if you could you show that trap technique again for anyone who wants to stay and see it again? Would you be willing to do that?
Sure, absolutely.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah, other people to sign off or stay on, it's fine with me. I'll leave.
That's Kirby, are you staying on? If you're leaving, maybe I need to do either another Zoom invite or if you can transfer the host over to me if you're leaving.
Let me see what I can do here.
Yeah, you can either transfer to him, or it gives you the option to for him to just leave without closing the meeting.
Okay, do we have a good full shot of Darryn right now?
Hey, thank you guys.
Darryn, I think you've got full screen. Do you have full screen right now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll leave it there and you continue on. And I'll check back in a little bit. And if no one's there, or you're doing something else, I'll just turn the meeting off at that point.
Okay.
I think it'll cut off around 9:30, 9:40 anyway. So go forth and help. Where do you go?
Okay.
Okay, just go on.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sensei.
Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna start off with the rear mugging attack scenario, and just for clarification, a couple of things. The knife is gonna be a threat when it becomes a slash or slicing type motion like this, right? And I'm sure y'all all familiar with that. But not necessarily a press up against the throat here, okay? That may cut me, but it'll be more of a razor type cut versus a terminal cut, which would be like this, okay? So the object for me, and of course, bringing my hands up as Sensei Kirby mentioned, to the height of the weapon. Now, this may not be an option for him if he's grabbing this. I'm trying to pin it back here, and I can't get it. But certainly, this was the one that I need anyway. Let me take a step back. Okay. Yeah, there we go. So here, as he's pressing this, I need to make one movement, which is going to encompass a couple of different things. One, my head to my arm, and I'm going to step over to that same side. So my right arm, my right ear to my right shoulder, and then stepping with my right foot outward a little bit. This helps me secure. The idea is to trap, if I could just take Jordan's hand for a second, right behind the hand area, because that's where his hand starts to get bigger, with my head and shoulder. So as he's giving me the threat, and maybe he has a command here, and I'm like, look, I don't want any trouble. From here, I'm doing that simultaneous movement here. Now, I'm not just standing here, and I'm not just holding it. Jordan can also demonstrate. When I have this, this is not a loose grab, and it does pull the blade away from my throat. It's still a very significant threat to me. But from here, even if Jordan tried to pull that out, he can't pull it out. It's not that I'm moving it and he can't get it. I'm literally holding my hand, pushing my right hand to the sky and driving my ear down to that, trapping his hand. And then the right step is also helping me secure. You can see his whole body moving there. So that's the significant hold. Now, is that clear enough for you to see, or do I need to get closer to the camera?
Well, that's fine.
No, that's good.
Okay, so now at that point, I'm not going to stand here and just try to hold this, and I still don't want to reach up for the bleed right here. And that's why I did this one step behind, and this is all in natural movement, right? So I'm not going to come here and freeze. I'm going to make this in one movement coming across. But when I come here and I get the blade trapped, and I immediately start to turn, and Jordan can attest to that. This is not just okay, it might turn up or it might turn down or it might not penetrate. The blade is actually strong enough, and the pressure is actually strong enough to actually, I'm driving it at that point with my arm. So the amount of pressure that I'm driving in is coming from my bicep area, and that is pretty significant. I could bury that blade as deep as I want to at that point, and then continue to exit and re-enter as many times as I want to without even touching the blade. Now, eventually, I want to move on to secure, no matter what, either disarm or to secure the blade myself. But from that position right there, one, I've successfully moved the blade away from a terminal threat in my throat. Two, I've successfully not only removed it from that threat, but I didn't compromise my position in allowing either my hand to be cut or something else. I'm not touching the blade for any end result when the person that is attacking you with it has ultimately done some damage to themselves. So I haven't touched the blade either. So there's a couple of things there. I have a full video that I can share with everyone if you want to see the full video, or I could share it right now. It's about 26 minutes that kind of talks through the whole thing again, but I could share it if anybody would like to see it.
I'd like to see it not right now,
Okay.
but if you have a website or can drop the link into the chat.
I'm going to share my email address as my name. I'm going to change my name. And if you would like to see it, just send me an email and I'll share a link that you can see the video.
Okay.
Does that take kind of the next step? No, I mean, the guy stabbed himself a few times in his pecs, and now does it go like, are you gonna extract yourself out of that situation?
Yeah, I could advance that, correct.
Gotcha.
You guys got the video. Talk about that. There.
Mm-hmm. There's my email address for anyone that would like to see it.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't see it. Was that?
Yeah, I don't either.
It's my name at the bottom of the left-hand corner of the screen.
Like right there.
No?
Yeah, it's not coming up.
Okay, I'll just say it if you want to write it down.
Okay.
Okay, it's D_MELERINE at Hotmail.
Okay.
Okay. So D_MELERINE.
Correct.
All right.
At
Hey,
hotmail.com.
all right. Hey, thanks for taking the extra few minutes.
Yeah, I appreciate it too.
No worries.
We'll be in touch.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, have a great day.
Y'all have a great one.
Thank you.
All right, I enjoyed it, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.